So now once we start off with what is writing readiness, as we discussed yesterday, we discussed about how do we understand what is readiness, right? So readiness is basically physically and mentally getting prepared for doing any kind of task where you understand the task and you have interest in the task. So we remember that we had two very important components. One was understanding and the second was interest, right? So readiness is basically having both the things together and doing the task. And hence, other than having understanding and the interest, you should be physically and mentally prepared and ready to do the task, right? So we all as educators, parents, teachers, we always have this question that when is a right age for a child to write? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Should we introduce writing? When should we introduce writing to the child? So the answer is not that simple. As we have an age for voting, or we have an age for marriage, the answer is not that simple, because every child is developmentally getting different kind of inputs from the environment, and with the kind of inputs which the child is getting, the readiness is decided by that. Hence what we are going to discuss today is what are the different kind of activities which we should actually give it across to the child, which makes the child ready for taking that writing task up, right? So we all should be aware that what kind of activities the child should do so that the child should be ready, right? So as I said, readiness means a level of physical and mental maturity at which the child is able to meet the requirements of the task, understand the task, and do it with interest. Okay, so the two most important component, always remember, understanding and interest of the child. If the child is having interest, then he will understand. If the child is understanding, then he will always develop the interest. So it is a vicious cycle where the child is constantly learning and having interest in the task. So all of you are able to view the slide. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you all are able to view the slide? Yes, great. When we come to writing readiness, as I said, it's going to be the skills which the child has to have so that the child is able to write and is ready to write. Again, understand and have interest, right? Always remember this. So what are the skills which the child should have? The first is the child should understand the letters and the names of the letters. The child should be able to manipulate with different objects. The child should be able to hold the pencil correctly. The child should be able to understand how much of pressure should the child put across to have a writing done. The child should have sitting tolerance. The child should have the space concept. If the child is not having a space concept, he'll not be able to write within the lines. So these are some of the very, very important prerequisites for the child to start writing or becoming ready for writing. Yes? So let's move on to the 10 tips, right? Top tip number 10, right? The first is shoulder stability. Now, of late, with the new kind of culture of our living or the lifestyle which we have, where we have nuclear families, where we stay in apartments, where we don't have much of space for outdoor play, the playing of a child is limited to indoor, right? Remember our days where we used to be outdoors almost at least 4 5 hours. I mean, just to remember my old days, I never used to be there seen in my house from 3 o'clock in the evening till 7 o'clock in the evening. So 4 hours I was absconding. So it's always better for a child to spend time outdoor, because it the gross motor development of the child is the first. If the gross motors, if you don't have muscles, if you don't have muscles onto your hands, if you don't have muscles onto your wrist, if you don't have muscles onto your palm, it's very difficult for a child to hold a pencil. Hence, gross motors, your shoulder, your hip, your waist, your legs, your feet. Development is the first. That is the reason the child starts developing gross motor first and then moves on to fine motor. So always remember, gross motor development should be the first priority of the child. Hence, I always promote outdoor play. The moment the child is playing outdoor and spending considerable time in outdoor activities, the concentration of the child increases, the stability of the child increases, the posture of the child becomes much more easier. The child can concentrate. Always think that why do we have a lunch break or a PT class? That's because for your concentration, you need the child to be outdoor. So start thinking about shoulder activities for the children where these portions are well developed, and then from the shoulder stability it moves on to your arms, and then it moves on to your palm, and then it bifurcates into your fingers, right? So always start with the shoulders. Give a lot of monkey bars to the child. Give a lot of pulling and pushing activities to the child. Give them bags which they can hold and come back. They can be help to you. But in the same point of time, what you're doing is building up the strength of the shoulder, right? Please remember that is very important. So the first tip, or the top 10 tip number 10, shoulder stability of the child. Let's move on to tip number 9. The tip number 9 talks about crossing the midline. So what is midline? If you see, there's a picture over here. So the line, or the imaginary line which starts so if the ladies, if you are all Hindus, basically we have this, sindoor putting in at the center of our head. That's from there, the imaginary line which crosses in between your nose, dividing your body into two equal halves till the end of your body, or the pelvic region. That is your midline. Now, it's very important that the child uses both the parts of the body equally, right? Obviously there will be a dominant aspect, because majority of us, we use one aspect and one half of the body to be kind of a little more into regular activities. But at the same point of time, utilization of both the parts and crossing of both the parts is really important. Now, why it is important? Because the moment you are not crossing the lines, your functioning of your brains on the both the sides will not happen, right? Hence, it's very important that we have activities built on for making the child utilize in crossing the midline, right? So when we are mopping, giving the activities of, let's say, mopping, giving the activities of sweeping to the child, uh, obviously at this young age it's quite tedious, but have activities where the children can sit and they can do exercises moving their body one part to the other. So PE activities where you are crossing your midlines, where you are taking your right hand and touching your left feet, and left hand and touching your right feet. So some activities where you are crossing your midline, or some exercises which you are crossing your midline, is really necessary at everyday level for a toddler to, so from, I'm talking about a 2 years to 6 years or 7 years. These are definite activities which should be as a routine to the child. Some of the home examples where you can do is mopping and sweeping, which are home core activities. But again, it depends on the level of the child and the age of the child where you have to give these activities. But remember, exercise, crossing the midlines are important. Tip number 8. Now, we have already crossed the midline, right? So when we cross the midline, we have bilateral coordination. That means that we are able to use both the half of the bodies when it is required. Now, how it is required for a child when the child is writing? Now, when the child has to erase something, he has to hold the paper on one hand and erase it, right? When he has to write, he has to hold the paper or hold the book on one hand and write it, right? So at the same point of time, these activities helps in helping the child in writing. So we are talking about bilateral coordination or bilateral integration, some of the activities which you can actually give it across to your children are cycling, hopping, swimming, football. So these activities helps the child in integrating the bilateral movements, both the hands using together. Some of the very common activities which you can start doing at home is, so all of you would have gone to a buffet, right? Holding the plate in one hand and eating with another hand, right? So give the child those opportunities. Ice creams, cup ice creams instead of a cone, right? So when you're giving the child a cone ice cream, he uses one hand, but when you're giving a cup ice cream, both the hands. So bilateral coordination, right? So these activities will help the child in writing activities again. Writing, readiness. Object manipulation. This is tip number 7. Very important skill which should start from home, where a child is able to understand how to utilize an object which is given across to him. It might be a, a karchi, it might be a kadai, it might be a spoon, it might be a fork. The child should be able to hold it properly, understand how much of pressure to be given to scoop. Let's say, for example, it's a spoon. When a child is eating with a spoon, the child has to actually put the spoon in the food, make a scoop of it, and take it to the mouth. Don't you think there's a lot of activities which is involved, which is very similar to writing? Now, what happens? The child has to understand that how much of how much of pressure I have to put in to make a scoop. How much of pressure I have to put in to take that food to my mouth. What is the angle I should put it so that it goes to my mouth? What is the angle should I have so that the food comes to the spoon? And that's how the child understands the concept of how much of pressure, how much of amount, the coordination, hand-eye coordination. So these manipulations at the initial level of the child is really important to hold a pencil, to understand how much of pressure should the child put in across a pencil, to utilize the fingers properly, and to have a perfect angle for holding a pencil and writing it on the paper, right? So object manipulation, tip number 7, which is really important to start off with children at very young stage. So don't feed your children, give them liberty to have food by themselves, when to use a spoon, when to use a fork, they should understand. Yeah. Tip number 6, hand-eye coordination, where a child needs to understand that until and unless he concentrates, he will not be able to do a task perfectly. Now, when I say this, a lot of craft activities, which as teachers we keep on doing, these activities might be looking a wastage of time, but these are some of the activities which builds writing readiness in the children, because it helps in the child concentrating on either cutting or taking out the gum and pasting at the right space. The space concept, where the child has to, okay, I cannot put a eye where I have to put the mouth. So the child has to understand that if he's drawing a face and if he's putting some eyes and nose and mouth at certain space, the face has to look like a face when he puts the eyes at the right place, nose at the right place, and mouth at the right space. So the child is understanding the concept of space. This will help him in writing within the lines, writing within those square boxes, having the concept of those 4-line notebooks, having the concept of, 3-line notebooks, having a concept of 2-line notebooks. So once the child does these lot of activities of art and craft, he understands all these things which are building readiness for writing again. So some of the activities, obviously, as I said, craft activities, cutting activities. um, I love my kitchen, and I feel that kitchen is something which can teach children almost everything in the world. So if you look at peeling off the beans, putting it across onto right place, the vegetables, taking out the vegetables and putting across into the right place. If you are doing some stirring activities in the kitchen, please let the child do it. Making a cake, please let the child do it. This not only helps the child to build the shoulder strength, build the hand grip, but also concentration and interest, right? So start involving your child into your kitchen. This will help you a lot in building writing readiness. Let's move on to tip number 5, attention and concentration. The child has to concentrate to write. So how do you build the concentration? Now, again, as I said, these things develops only when the child is understanding and having interest. So the writing activities which you are giving it across to the child, before that the child should be ready to have sit and concentrate and do that activity. So prior to that, you definitely need to have to the child that he goes to an outdoor, does a play, he has that kind of interest in sitting and paying attention to that activity. So when you are talking about attention and concentration of the child, you need to be very careful that the child has spent enough of time in doing the activities which he has to do before sitting. For example, running a bit, playing outdoor, doing a little bit of physical exercise which helps him to calm down and sit, right? So tip number 5, that you will have to have concentration and attention, for which a bit of outdoor activities and burning out that energy of the child is very important, right? Tip number 4, postural control. Now, until and unless, so we all know that every aspect of development falls into certain age. A child first, when the child is born, the child first is sleeping straight. Then the child turns, maybe around 3 months, the child turns. Then the child starts crawling. Maybe about 4 months or 5 months, the child starts crawling. Once the child starts crawling, then the child sits. Once the child sits, then the next step is that the child starts holding something and getting up. Then what happens is, then the child start holding and starts walking, then leaves that object and starts walking by themselves. Now, why these stages happens, I mean, why these developmental things happen stage by stage? Because for every developmental stage, you need a former development should happen. Until and unless that previous or former development has already happened, the next developmental stage cannot happen. So when we have spoken so much about the outdoor activity, the shoulder stability, the sitting tolerance, until and unless the child's gross motors are well developed, sitting postures cannot be correct for the child. Okay, so until and unless the hip bones, the waist, the shoulders, the back, and the neck and the head are going to be perfectly okay for sitting. And sitting, I'm not talking about sitting as such for a couple of seconds. I mean, when we are talking about writing, the child needs to sit for at least about a 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes or 30 minutes kind of thing. We are talking about a session of that kind. So for a child to sit for a 20 minutes or 30 minutes program, he needs to have all these gross motors well developed. If you are jumping the gun and you are making the child sit before the child is already ready, there might be postural difficulties which the child might have. Now, one of the major reasons why during the post, 30s or 40s, a child, I mean, we as a second generation are having problems into our back, our, knees, is because that probably we were not ready for that kind of sitting tolerance and we are still sitting. The kind of physical activities which we had to do, we are not doing. Hence, it's very important that these things, again, I repeat, shoulders, waist, hip, back, neck, and head. These has to be completely well well developed in terms of gross motor, so that the child has a postural control to sit for about a 20 minutes activity and write. Okay. Tip number 3, hand finger strengthening. Now, the moment that we are talking about hand and finger strengthening, we are talking about straight away jumping from a gross motor to a fine motor activity, where the child needs to have this portion and this portion to be strengthened to hold a pencil and start the grip and start writing. So you need to have a lot of hand and finger strengthening activities, where obviously you can see one of the activities displayed where the child is doing a hammer, where he's holding a pin and he's putting it inside the clay. Okay, you can decide different kind of activities. Clay is something which is very, very good for your hand and finger strengthening. So start giving atas to your child, start giving play dohs to your children for playing. Start having those nut and bolt activity. There are a lot of activities like the chain, the linking chains and all, for taking it out and putting it back again, for taking it out and putting it back again. This helps a child developing these strengths. Okay, so always remember, these strengths will help the child to grip, hold, and write. So the ATA activity, DO activity, linking chain activities, block activities. Then you have Legos. Legos are beautiful activities for hand and finger strengthening. So start inculcating those or having those things as a practice into your daily routine activities, so that a child can start getting readiness for writing. Okay. Tip number 2, selection of dominant hand, right? um, majority of parents, they prefer their child to write with a right hand, right? um, However, it's very important for the child to utilize the hand which he or she wants to, because his body talks to him and tells him that your left hand is ready for writing, not your right hand, right? And we can't hear that. The body talks to the child, or body talks to him for taking that decision up. So when we are disrupting that decision of the child, that becomes really difficult for getting that child into a readiness activity for writing, right? This is more predominant in Indian culture. That's because in Indian culture, we utilize right hands for doing activities which are good, and left hand is utilized usually into the toilet activities. And hence, with that Indian culture, we usually do not prefer our children to utilize left hand for writing, because writing is considered to be really auspicious. Scientifically, if you look at, your children has to decide which hand to be utilized, not the tradition, not the religion, not the culture. So let the child decide for what hand they need to use, and not dominating and telling them that, okay, no, you cannot write with your left hand and you should write with your right hand, right? So as teachers, educators, please remember, let the child choose. Correct? Let's move on to the last tip, the tip number 1. Now, we have already spoken about shoulder stability, hand strengthening, finger strengthening, the waist muscles, the hip muscles, everything. Now, when we come to writing, this is very important. Now, when you look at a child, the child always has this grip. When the children are infant, right? They always hold it as a feast every point of time. Whatever you give it across to them, they will just grasp it and hold it. They do not know to even release the hands, which is a very important aspect of fine motor development. So a child, when the fine motor development happens, the child understand when to hold and when to release. So releasing is also a very important aspect of your fine motor activity. Okay. The second important aspect of a fine motor activity is that the child should be able to separate the fingers, right? The hand has 5 fingers, and the child should be able to separate these fingers. Now, when I say separate these fingers, the index finger plays a very important role, the thumb plays a very important role, and the middle finger plays a very important role. The child should be able to do this thing, right? That means the child is able to separate these 3 fingers from these 2 fingers, which can go inside. Okay. So when the child is able to do this activity, that means the child is able to completely detach these fingers from each other, from the palm. The palm and the fingers can be detached, and the child is completely ready to write in a legible handwriting. That's where the pattern starts building in, that you have a specific way of writing an A, a B, a C, or a specific alphabet. That is where we have a specific mode of writing, and that writing starts developing and building on till the next 15 years. The moment, or maybe 12 years, maybe once you are there at the age of 15 or 16, that's where your handwriting is uniform. So wherever you see a, the A is uniform throughout wherever you find an A. So post that only you built in a signature, right? So that's where we say that when the child is adult, there should be a signature where we start putting it across onto any kind of legal documents and stuffs like that, where the handwriting is already kind of taken a pattern. Okay, now if you see in the figure, the first figure, which is a fisted grip, is 1 year to 2 years. So absolutely the child is not ready for writing. Look at the kind of grip the child is having. 2 years to 3 years, digital pronate grip, which is, look at the way the child is holding. The child is trying to separate the index finger from the rest of the fingers. Yeah, where the child is wanting to hold the crayon or the pencil or the pen. Ideally, this is not an age where you should actually introduce a pencil or a pen to the child. At this age, it should be always crayons, where the crayons are little thicker and you can help, I mean, the child can actually hold it properly and start scribbling, right? So 2 years to 3 years, the child should have scribbling activities. 4 years to 5 years, oh sorry, 3 years to 4 years, four finger grip, where the child has started separating all the fingers. You know, if you see, the child has started separating all the four fingers and started attempt to write. So this is where slowly we start introducing writing activities to the child. 4 to 6 year is where the child actually starts having a tripod grip. Okay, and child starts having legible writing and the handwriting takes a little bit of shape, and the child starts formatting sentences, the child starts writing into a little more number of words than what the child was writing before. uh, Dynamic tripod grip, 6 years to 7 years. By using these kind of grip, the child has been a little pro into writing right now, where the child is a little fluent and has started to write onto a better and legible handwriting, which the child is doing right now. I'll just take you through a developmental chart, which I want to show it across to you guys, where it will just give you a gist of what the development happens at what age. Yeah. All of you can view the screen. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Okay, great. So let's see the the developmental chart, where we see these are the developmental milestones, and the second is the last column is the possible implications if the milestones are not achieved. Now from 0 to 6 months, obviously there is a voluntary grasp. Whatever you give it across to the child will just grab it. Okay, and the child doesn't know how to release, right? It's just a grasp. It's involuntary, it's just a reflex action because the child is getting used to the environment. The child is just born and just does not understand what is right and what is wrong. He just wants, as a reflexive action, the child just grasps. Okay, if the child does not grasp, obviously there is a delayed in the motor activity of the child, poor muscle development, and hence it needs intervention. Okay, 6 months to 12 months, uh, puts the object in mouth. So there is a direction which has already come in when the child is 6 months to 12 months. The thumb and finger are yet not separate to each other. The child has started pointing out to objects and hence understands to use the index finger. Okay. If the child does not use the index finger or tries separating the index finger from the rest of the four fingers, there might be a developmental delay. There might be indication of delayed sensory development of the child, and hence again we need to be careful about what are the developmental delays which are there. The child is able to drop and pick up the toys, and hence what we can say is that the fine motor is getting a little developed and the child is able to release objects now. Okay, so this movement has started coming in, right? So the opening of the palms have already started coming in. Now let's come to stage 2, 1 year to 2 year, where the child starts building up blocks. Okay, now when the somebody's not are you not able to view the chart, Suganya? It's a
Yes, ma'am.
You are able to view it, right?
No, ma'am, I'm not able to view, ma'am.
You're not able to view it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just try and share it once again. Just hold on. I'll just give me a couple of seconds. You should be able to view it. Are you all able to view it now?
Yes, ma'am. Now
Okay.
it's okay.
Okay, cool. So what we discussed is that the stage 0, where the child is between 0 months to 6 months, the grasp is not developed and this movement is not there. It is only holding. It's not releasing. Okay. When we go to stage 1, where the child is between to 6 months to 12 months, the child has started pointing out and started trying to detach the index finger from the rest of the fingers. Okay. When we go to stage 2, the child is between 1 year to 2 year and the child has started developing to build in blocks. So the holding power is little better. The child is able to put one on top of other, trying to release it and stuffs like that. Tries to hold a spoon and brings it to the mouth, holds the cup of the drink and tries to drink it. And these are the things which helps the child to self feeds, do self activities by themselves. Now more they start doing these activities by themselves, only the first slide with the development chart was visible. uh, what you can do is, if you guys are not Zenobia, are you able to view this chart right now?
Yes, I am able to. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, cool. So now when the child is at stage 2, the child has started self-feeding, self-helping himself or herself. Now the moment the child is able to do these things, the child is kind of getting ready to start, getting ready for writing. Now the moment you see that between 1 year to 2 years, the child is not able to do these things, taking a spoon, eating the ice cream, eating the food by themselves, this is a problem into their motor development, and hence it's a red flag that the child is not doing all these things, and hence it might be difficult for the child to do the next stage of development or get ready into the writing activities. Now, the stage 3, which is between 2 years to 3 years, the child has started turning the pages. Now, yesterday when we discussed about reading readiness, we also discussed about what when the child is ready to read. When so 2 years to 3 years, the child has started turning pages of the book. Now, hence what we say, the grip is started building up. Hence, it's all connected. So the reading, writing, arithmetic, everything is connected to each other. So the child has started turning page means the child has started using these fingers, to turn the page. The child has started holding crayons. This child has started imitating a circle. We start pattern writing at this stage where the child just holds the crayon and just draws a straight line, a sleeping line, a standing line, and a slanting line, right? So they are trying to copy the patterns at this point of time. Again, if the child is not able to do so, there is again issues into motor development, hand-eye coordination, copying or imitating. That might be an indicator of any kind of special need, because at this age, during the age group of 1.5 to 3 years, majority of the special need cases are detected. Hence, you will have to be very careful to understand what is the need of the child. 3 years to 4 years, they can copy a circle, imitate cross. So they can do from left to right and from right to left. Okay. They can snip papers with scissors. So these muscles are getting developed. And again, you see, these 3 fingers are getting used in the scissor, right? So scissor activities are really great for writing readiness. Stage 5, when the child copies a cross, again can copy a square. So the child understands the pattern now, from left to right, right to down, down to again from right to left, and then up. Okay, the child has started understanding patterns, the way the directions is moving, right? Child understands numbers, the child understands patterns, shapes, a lot of things this point of time, and can copy as well. Dressing himself, undressing himself independently comes by age of 4 and 5. Obviously, if there is a requirement of if there is a special need, these tasks are going to be difficult, and hence we can say that the child has to have some kind of intervention. Stage 6, which comes to 5, within 5 to 6, now the child has started becoming a little more independent in writing, does not need much of assistance, because the child is already started imitating, the grip has started building up, the fingers have started opening up, and they have started getting separated from the palm. 6 to 7 years, which is the stage 7, the child has started writing sentences, separating words and giving gaps between two words. Like, this is a cat. So this space is space, a space, cat, and a full stop over there. The child understands those concepts, where the child has started understanding the concept of a space, understanding that these are two different words. The child has to start building in sentences, and one sentence can come after another sentence after the full stop. Okay, so these are the stages of development of the child when we are talking about uh, writing readiness. Let's come back to the slide. I think we are done up. Just a second. I think we should be done up with the slides. Let me just we are done up with the 10 tips. Just to give you a brief introduction about chalk. Chalk obviously does a lot of certification courses, and one of the course which is there is reading, writing, and arithmetic readiness. These are all certification programs. We have more than 45 special certification courses which are all 10 hours program. You guys can choose out and see that which all programs you want. If you want or you are keen to do it, you can reach out to us. Obviously, we do have long-term programs of 4 months and 6 months, which are your early childhood diploma courses and diploma and nursery teachers training courses, which are online courses right now. But then obviously we have centers across India. We are present across Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, across into different schools where we are set up our centers. Obviously, due to pandemic, we are taking all online classes now. Um, in case you want to reach out to us to know more about the short term and the long term courses, you can reach out to us on the phone number 9110883082, or you can write to us at info@chalk.academy. So we are done for the day today. It was amazing experience. I would want to understand if there is any questions from your end. You can switch on your mics and if you want to ask any question.
Thank you, Sheetal. That was very, very lucidly and very step-by-step explained.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I have a question here.
Definitely.
You see, most of the times I have been noticing that the age at which children are pushed to write is being brought forward. You know, if a child is entering into a nursery or a play school, even then there are expectations that the child should be able to hold and start writing far beyond the readiness. What does one do to such kids? Because when they've been pushed, they back out after a certain age. There is a resistance I have noticed to writing.
Exactly. That's where I told in the beginning itself, understanding and interest, which are the two pillars of a child getting ready and starting doing any kind of activity. Now, if I talk about, this is a vicious cycle. We are actually working backwards. We are not progressing. What we are doing is we are reacting to a situation which is going to be there in probably about 4 years time for the child. Now when I say that, what I mean is that a child has to be going to class 1 to a, let's say, a formal school or a K-12 school, and there is writing already over there, which is a cursive writing into some schools which are traditional schools, and there are some schools where there are script writings. But the child has to start writing by the time the child is at 6 years of age and going to a formal school. So the pressure starts building up on the child from the time the child starts going to a preschool. Now, that's the saddest part. On top of that, what happens is our teachers are usually not trained enough to handle the readiness of a child. So, if these two aspects are taken care of, I'm pretty sure that the push which is given to the children would not be given. On the third aspect, which is the third angle where the parents play a major role, instead of making the child force doing something, if they start experiential learning for the child, where the child starts experiencing things at home. I say that there's enough of things which we can do at home. So my kitchen is my workplace where I can say that my child can learn almost every skill, whether it is reading readiness, whether it is writing readiness, whether it is communication, life skills, everything my child can learn in kitchen. So if the children are involved in the kitchen, if the children are involved into the day-to-day activities of home, the home course basically, I'm pretty sure that the writing readiness is going to be start building in from at a little early age. But at the same point of time, as I said, there is a certain age for every activity or every developmental milestone to be achieved. It's really not fair for the children to be pushed across for just writing because they have to fit into something where they are not ready to be fit in.
Thank you. But I think this is where we adults play a role. We have to be understanding and not get over ambitious to get them ready.
Exactly. And I don't know, with the NEP 2020, which is already given a go ahead kind of thing, if that is getting implemented, there is a lot of methodical changes which is going to happen in the schools, which might help them in not getting pushed so much kind of thing. And on the other hand, children, I mean, the teachers are also going to be more given a lot of importance into training aspects where they understand how to handle children at this age. So I'm hoping that it gets implemented quite early. So as an educator or an early educator, I am quite excited about NEP getting into place. Any other question?
Hi, ma'am. I'm Elizabeth.
Yeah, hi
Uh,
Elizabeth.
okay. See, you spoke about the posture. They have to sit straight while writing for about 20 to 30 minutes, right? If they are unable to sit for more than 20 to 30 minutes, if they have a backache, if they're not able to do that, and maybe if they are cranky or something like that. So, what kind of activity can we give them? Is it for sure they should sit continuously for 20 minutes like that?
No, 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 no. So what I meant, Elizabeth, is that when you do a writing activity for a child at preschool age, the child is not going to be fast enough to write, right? The child, let's say, for example, you're giving some portion to be completed for the child. The child needs at least a 15 minutes or 20 minutes to sit and write that thing, right? Now, when I say that, the
Okay.
child needs to be ready for sitting for that 15 minutes time. Now, when I again say
Okay.
that the child needs to be ready for sitting for that 15 minutes of time, the child should have enough of muscles developed for helping him to sit for that 15 minutes. The child should have enough of postural control to sit for the 15 minutes time. Now, for
Okay.
that, the child has to spend at least a 3 hours of time outside,
Okay.
outdoors. So there should be a lot of, the monkey bars, there should be slides, there should be swings, there should be. So we feel that playing is kind of, we are just wasting time. But when the child is sitting on a swing, for example, can you imagine the kind of strength the child is using for holding that string? The kind of posture which the child has to sit so that the child doesn't fall. So the child takes care of all these things by themselves and hence builds the body strength to sit. Now, once these activities are done, the child is getting ready for sitting inside the classroom.
Okay, actually, you know how our parents are, they're always busy and they don't take their children on a daily basis out to park. It is weekly once or twice they take out. So maybe they lack those exercises. So do
Yes,
we have to speak to parents on giving them such exercises on a daily
absolutely.
basis, at least at home?
Absolutely. That is inevitable, darling. That is inevitable.
Okay.
So you need to have parents doing these kind of activities because as a preschooler, let's say if you are running a preschool, you do not have that kind of time to give it across to your children because you function for 2 hours or 3 hours, right? The child has to do these activities at home. The parents have to take a time for the child. If the parents are not taking out time for the child, it it's going to be really difficult for the child to be ready and do these kind of activities again and again. So parents have to be taking care of that part. You can help them out in jotting down activities and telling them that, these are the schedule for this week. You'll have to finish it off. And as teachers, you will have to take a responsibility of following it up back from the parents that did you do this activity or not? Can you send me some pictures where the child has gone to the, park? How did he like? So these questions should be asked to the parents just to keep them on track.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was really useful, whatever you told us today. Great.
Great. Great. Any other questions? Great. It was an amazing session. I loved all of your participation and your patience of listening to me. So we meet tomorrow again at 11 o'clock for the day 3 session of the top 10 tip series of workshop. And tomorrow we will do a topic of arithmetic readiness in children. Okay. So see you all tomorrow at 11. Bye-bye.